the basic concept that's typically used is you've got a whole bunch of categories of different types of documents. You've seen this a million times, Mike, I'm sure. Just a few examples. Governing documents like the Articles of Incorporation and bylaws will be referenced. You've got your Forms 990, your tax exemption applications. You've got the financial stuff, Mike, bank statements, cash receipts, records, the general ledger, financial records, your financial statements. And on legal, you've got contracts and leases. With donors, you've got donor communications that will be referenced. Then you've got a whole bunch of emails and communications within your staff that fall into maybe a number of these different categories. So it starts from listing all these categories, and for all the categories, there will be in the traditional policy a specific time period for how long you maintain it. And some may be flagged as like these are permanent records. Some might say hold them for 3 years. Some may say 7 years, 10 years, 30 years, etc. And this makes some sense. There's stuff that you don't need to keep around permanently. There's stuff that you need in the event the IRS comes and audits the organization, so you want to keep them for a certain amount of time. But what I've noticed is that the entire approach assumes that there's kind of an annual cycle that is actually very burdensome. And frankly, I suspect most organizations are not doing it the way the normal, typical policy would assume. So I'll walk you through kind of how I view these traditional policies. It assumes that every year, at a certain point during the year, an organization is going to be doing an assessment of what it has and what documents are coming up, being due for deletion. Did it reach that period, let's say 7 years from the end of the tax year? Okay, let's find everything that falls within that category and find it on the chart and then delete it all. But when you think about what this requires as a practical matter, a staff of an organization would have to take a day, a week, a couple weeks every year, sit and go through, either put a message out to other staff members saying, look around for what you have, send it along to the COO or whoever it is, and just taking a lot of time out of busy schedules to find the documents, match them up with the right category, figure out what the timing is, which that is not always easy to figure out. And based on my experience, I'm not sure how many organizations actually do this as an annual cycle. Mike, as I like to say, and I think we both share this, if you've got a policy and you're not following it, that's almost worse than not having a policy at all. And it just undercuts the purpose of having one in the first place. And to the extent an organization is trying to do it, I just feel like the way this usual system works, it lends itself to kind of arbitrary decisions, because it's really hard to follow it to the letter. So if you're not following that schedule with everything, again, you're undercutting the purpose, and you're making it look more arbitrary than you were trying to when you had the policy.
So Ben, I agree.
What do you think,
with
Mike?
that
Does this resonate?
point.
Yeah.
So to get there real quick, because I think,
Sure. Yeah.
And I think you'll agree with this statement. People recognize the name when we talk about the document, the retention and destruction policy, and even the dyslexic and how they list it.
Yeah.
And number one. Number two, in my experience, is the check the boxes. Do we have the policy? But nobody's reading it. And number three, I definitely think it's worth repeating. Having a policy that you're not following, in most cases, is worse than not having the policy, because now it's down and you're out of compliance. You're not following their own rules, and there's some definite, I like to use the word leeway, how you construct that policy. There's no, like most policies, there's no one policy that fits every organization, and even over time that should change.
What I aim for is something that is actually achievable and it can actually be followed. And I had a few of these issues in mind that I tried to remedy. I would get questions all the time about, well, what is the right period? How many years? Does it have to be 7 years for this document? And there's more art than science to a lot of that. So I try to, in my policy, avoid this question about, specific numbers of years. A few other factors. Number one, this old style policy, I feel like it came from a time, Mike, and I certainly remember some of these days, maybe you can speak to it, when document retention was about having a lot of boxes, in a storage facility or taking up space in the office. And there's a reality that the world is just different now. Electronic storage is the norm, and it's not nearly as expensive as it used to be maintaining a lot of these documents. So I think the need to be deleting everything on an annual cycle, or not everything, but deleting a lot of stuff on an annual cycle is less. And also, a point you reminded me of, Mike, defaulting and giving some acknowledgement that you never know when a document is going to be needed. It doesn't matter that it's 10 years old and it's a matter that didn't come up. An organization may be launching a program where that experience that they went through 20 years ago, this is not that long ago, I've almost been practicing 20 years, may be relevant and may have some real insights there that can inform it. So for those reasons, I moved with my template away from this kind of constant rotation of deleting large categories of documents.
I really like the way you organize that template, and I'd like to learn your driver. Why did you go first, second, third on it?
Sure. First thing that the template does, and I may not remember the exact order, but like most traditional templates, it's not different in this regard. It lists a bunch of categories of documents that are to be maintained permanently by the organization. So in that respect, I did stick to some categories. I widened it out a little bit. I have more documents in our template that are to be retained permanently, or at least until the organization decides to change its policy, and it can always do that, by a board vote. But just kind of setting forth, this category just always are to be maintained, not to be deleted. Another thing that it does, which is not too different from most policies, you'll find this everywhere, sets some standards for electronic storage of documents. So it needs to be retrievable, just some basic technical stuff that you'll see in most policies, and you've got to have that as a basic element. And my template does kind of assume that that's going to be the norm, and that in the normal course, once you scan something in and have it electronically, unless it's flagged, for being a very important document to have a paper copy of, the paper copies are then in the normal course going to get deleted. It has, again, consistent with most policies, standard language about ceasing all destruction efforts when there is what we call a legal hold. So if there's an audit by the IRS that's pending, if there's a possible claim where there might be documents that could come out in discovery, but you'll get a letter from either the executive director, CEO, the organization's legal counsel saying, do not destroy, modify, alter documents fitting this category. And it'll describe the things that are relevant to the matter. So it's got language about that. The key area, I would say, where the policy template that we've got on the site is different is how it treats all the other documents that are not to be maintained permanently. And I think that was the key thing that I tried to do a little differently. And I tried to just give more flexibility. So if we're not in the categories of permanent documents, the approach in our template, it presumes we're just going to keep documents. And then when the board or the committee or an authorized person deems the time to be right to go through and let's streamline, there will be an official action setting forth the parameters of that. And at that time, you can go delete documents if it seems appropriate. Subject to the requirements of the law, you can never do it when there's a legal hold. You should never do it if it would be a violation of Sarbanes-Oxley and all that. But otherwise, why put everything on a cycle? Why not just reserve the authority to take an action and say, now is the time, and now we're going to focus our efforts on deleting. And maybe that happens every few years, every 5 years, every 10 years. That's my main thinking on that difference is I don't think it needs to be rigid. I think that can be more flexible.